Hey, what's up guys? It's AJ here, and decided to make another video since I finally hit 100 mil fishing. This video is not really going to be my progress. I'm going to save another video for that since this one's probably going to be pretty long, and it's a pretty in-demand video. I've had a lot of people ask me to make this, and it's going to be a little bit informative, but it's more going to be like a ramble type of thing. I'm not really going to stick to a script. I don't really have one, but I have some prompts, I guess, to help me out here. So this video is gonna be about polyphasic sleep, and really it's a very unexplored and uncommonly known phenomenon, and there isn't too much science behind it, but there is a lot of putting pieces together and people figuring out ways to push it as far as their limits with sleep. And I know like a lot of people in the RuneScape community talk about sleep and how they want to minimize their sleep, and people talk about like sleeping 5 hours a night and how they can maintain it, and ways of sleeping monophasically, which I'll get into in a second here. And trying to adapt to like sleeping little amounts, but there is actually ways you can sleep less amounts and still have healthy sleep, which is basically the fundamental of polyphasic sleep. One of the biggest potential game changers in the meta is pretty much anything that can save a lot of time and you can give you more time during the day, and sleep is a huge factor in your playtime and anyone's playtime really. You know, most people will say they sleep between 6 and 8 hours a night. Anywhere in that kind of ballpark is usually what most people sleep, and there's some people who do sleep less and have slept less successfully, whether it be from just willpower and motivation or because they have like a sleep disorder or something. Regardless, for most people it's pretty much impossible to maintain like anything less than 6 hours a night. Even 6 hours a night long term is pretty hard to maintain for most people. Even myself, I could never sleep more than a week 6 hours a night without feeling really tired and wanting to sleep more. I usually sleep 7 hours monophasically, and before I say any more, I'm going to explain what monophasic and polyphasic and all this stuff means. Monophasic means sleeping once per day, and usually one long session at nighttime is pretty much the norm. And polyphasic sleep basically means sleeping multiple times per day, so more than once, meaning monophasic does not fall in the category of polyphasic sleep. So as a lot of you may know, I have a pretty unique sleep schedule, I guess, at least unique to the community. I know there's other people in the world that do sleep schedules very similar to mine. What I'm on is what I call, or I guess what is known as a dual core sleep schedule. And a core is basically like one period of sleep that isn't like that is at least 90 minutes long, because anything less than that is considered a nap. And what my schedule basically is I sleep 3.5 hours around dusk. It's usually at 11 o'clock is when I go to bed, if I'm not interrupted or distracted. As you all know, I do, well, not all of you, but some of you may know I do have a kid, and sometimes that can affect my sleep times. And my second sleep is at 90 minutes long, and it's in the morning, and it's usually before I go to work. And then I have a third sleep, which is a 20-minute nap, and it's somewhere in the afternoon, usually in the later afternoon. So this totals to 5 hours and 20 minutes per day. And like, note that I said before that I couldn't sleep for 6 hours or less without feeling like tired monophysically after like a week. But I've been doing this sleep schedule for about 2 months now, and I haven't been tired pretty much after like 2 weeks of doing it. So like the past month and a half, I haven't really felt any sort of fatigue. which is my sort of testimony to why polyphasic sleep does actually work, and it can actually be used to make your RuneScape games a lot more fat. So my past experience, I have only been polyphasic for probably about a little over half a year now, I'd say, and I started out with a simple biphasic schedule. It's called siestas, where I would sleep like 5 hours a night and then sleep 90 minutes in the afternoon, so it would total 6.5, and that was like my first like step to polyphasic sleep. And then I started to experiment a little more and tried segmented sleep. Segmented sleep is basically like it's kind of the same thing as monophasic sleep, except you split your sleep into two sections, one being at night and one being in the morning, usually 3 hours each. It gives you that waking time in the middle of the night, which is pretty peaceful, honestly, once you get used to it. That is like one of the big benefits of polyphasic sleep, actually, for me at least. I have peace and quiet at night, as opposed to like most adults my age who are like responsible and are always busy during the day and don't really have that peace and quiet. So yeah, then I experimented a little more and tried out a triphasic sleep schedule. Triphasic means 3 sleeps, each 90 minutes long, every 8 hours. So you do it over the course of 24 hours. You sleep 3 times, 90 minutes each. And I did that for about a month, and then I eventually couldn't do it anymore because I was like so stressed out from school and I was just oversleeping all the time, and I just kind of gave up. It was a pretty difficult schedule, to be honest. And then I pretty much stuck to segmented until the school semester, the last one's finished, and then I went to Everyman 3. Everyman 3 means I sleep 3.5 hours at night and take 3 20-minute naps throughout the day. That was very difficult to do, and I did it for about a month before I just couldn't do it anymore. I was just too tired and it wasn't working. And then I kind of took a break again, went back to segmented sleep as sort of my fallback schedule, because it's a pretty relaxing schedule, very similar to monophasic, with some of my favorite benefits of polyphasic sleep anyways. And then I started my dual core schedule, and I've been on it ever since, and it's been the most successful schedule to date. And I'm proud of being able to adapt to 5 hours and 20 minutes per night. So I know a lot of people doubt polyphasic sleep, saying that, okay, there's the type of person who thinks that sleep is just like a homogeneous sort of like period of time, where like if you are laying in bed for 4 hours, you have 4 hours of sleep, and I'm putting sleep in like this bracket sort of thing. Like sleep is only measured in one way. So like people say like a 7-hour block of sleep is just sleep, and there's nothing more to it. But there is like a breakdown of like different stages of sleep when you do sleep, and this is pretty fairly known to most people. Most people aren't too ignorant towards this, but basically there are 4 stages of sleep. There's stage 1 REM, non-REM, stage 2 non-REM, and then stage 3 non-REM, also known as slow wave sleep or deep sleep. And then there's the 4th stage, which is called REM. And the only 2 stages of sleep that actually do anything to repair your brain, I guess, is REM sleep and the stage 3 sleep, also known as slow wave sleep. That is the deepest stage of sleep. And when you sleep monophasically, you typically, let's say for example you sleep 7 hours, most likely you will get like 3 hours of like combined REM and slow wave sleep, and like 4 hours of light sleep. That's just like, I'm just throwing out numbers there. It's usually like, it's around half and half. It's a pretty close percentage. And like just imagine that half the night you spend sleeping is like a waste of time. it's not like it's not really a waste of time because it's like the simplest way to sleep, and it's like it's basically like the easiest way to sleep. So it's, I wouldn't say it's like really a waste of time, but it's like an inefficient way of sleeping, I guess, is a better way to put it. Those 3 hours of like slow wave sleep and REM sleep are like what people like what polyphasers consider as the total sleep. So you slept for a total of 3 hours, and you had the excess 4 hours of light sleep, which didn't actually do anything to help you. It doesn't make anything worse. It just doesn't. It's like a neutral sort of phase of sleep, I guess. And it's also pretty well known that a sleep cycle is 90 minutes long. It's around 90 minutes long. It's not exactly always 90 minutes long, but it's a pretty close approximation, and it varies sometimes as well. Like for example, if you go to bed at night and you go through 2 cycles, usually it takes 3.5 hours total for those 2 cycles. Even though like they're 90 minutes long, the second cycle usually takes a little bit longer because it's trying to fit in a little more slow wave sleep. Because, and I'll get into it later, how slow wave sleep and REM sleep have certain like peaks during the day. Like, so slow wave sleep happens more frequently at night around dusk, whereas REM happens more frequently around dawn, which is morning. It also happens in the afternoons as well, between like 12 and 4 o'clock ish. Yeah. So what polyphasic sleep basically does is it prioritizes sleeping at the times where slow wave sleep occurs more frequently and where REM sleep occurs more frequently, and also abusing the power of nap repartition, which is a pretty cool mechanic, I guess, which I'll explain later. So it is pretty much proven by science that going to bed going to sleep in the afternoons and taking like a siesta nap is healthy for you, and it does like sort of regulate your hormones a little more, which can create like positive effects on the mind. It's not like too profound, but it does like help. It does like make you feel a little bit different in a good way. And then that's one thing. And now the second thing that has been shown by history is that I mean, like, have you ever wondered why sometimes you just wake up in the middle of the night for no reason and then you just go back to sleep like you normally would? Well, humans have like a tendency to wake up in the middle of the night, and it kind of dates back to the caveman era, where the man would sometimes wake up in the middle of the night to watch over the outside to make sure his family is safe, because like a lot of bad things can happen at night, especially at night, and they go back to bed when they feel the coast is clear. And like those are the two phenomenons that support actually the schedule that I'm on. So like, and it also supports like the way segmented sleep works, because segmented sleep is where you basically go to bed at night, wake up in the middle of the night in the graveyard hours, and then go to bed later on in the morning. That's actually a natural sleeping pattern. It's not something that's like really forced, because it doesn't take long to get used to, because you already most likely have the tendency to wake up in the middle of the night occasionally, not too often, but it happens sometimes. And then if you put that together with napping in the afternoons, you can create what is basically called the dual core sleep schedule, where you take the nap in the afternoon and you have like a segmented sleep at morning and night. So that's a pretty natural sleeping pattern that I'm actually on. But that's like a very small portion of what people have really pushed with polyphasic sleep. And I'm going to talk about how people have pushed it so far that they create schedules that allow you to sleep for 2 hours a day. And I know like a lot of people also have heard the term Uberman before, and Uberman does work, but it is very hard to adapt to, and I'll explain adapting to sleep schedules a little more later on. But basically Uberman, if you don't know what it is, it's in its basic form is sleeping 6 times a day for 20 minutes each. So if you do 6 times 20, that's 120 minutes. That's 2 hours of total sleep. And you space those sleeps out they're every 4 hours. And then there's a sort of a mechanism with that, and it's called the ultradian rhythm. And this rhythm basically means that, or it's basically a mechanism in your body that sort of forces your brain to go into a slightly lower brainwave frequency state every 4 hours. Basically, just means you're a little tired, a little drowsy for like about 20 to 30 minutes usually, and usually people don't notice it because either like they're not sleep deprived at all, or it's just like if you're stimulated enough, you won't feel it. But if you're doing something pretty boring, you'll feel it a lot more every 4 hours. So Uberman basically abuses this mechanism in that you go to bed every 4 hours, because every 4 hours you're gonna be tired at a certain point for 20 minutes, and you fit that 20-minute nap right into there, and it kind of like strengthens that nap and makes it more powerful. And the naps only work once you've sort of like done them, like once you've taken a nap at a specific time, and you've repeated that for like a decent amount of time, like let's say 2 or 3 weeks. Eventually your brain's going to prioritize certain sleep stages over others, mainly REM, because eventually your brain's going to go straight into REM sleep when it goes to sleep, instead of going right into the stage 1 sleep, which is useless, and usually REM only happens at the very end of sleep cycles. So if you are REM deprived and you've been napping at the same time every single day, your brain's going to decide, hey, maybe this is a good time to just get REM instead of light sleep. So it will start getting REM, and that's where the sleep repartitioning mechanism sort of comes into play. And this has been proven to work, but it's just never really been applied until people discovered polyphasic sleep, I guess. Are there any other mechanisms that are worth mentioning? I'm trying to go over the science of it right now, I guess. No, I don't think so. I can talk a little bit more about some schedules, I guess. Everyman is a pretty common one amongst polyphasers, because it's pretty effective if you have like a job, because it's pretty easy to work around, because you can space naps as far as like 6 hours apart, and if you have a lunch break, it's pretty easy to fit a nap into that lunch break, which is probably the only thing that would hold you back if you have a full-time job, as long as you have like a steady schedule, I guess. So yeah, like the hardest part about like polyphasic sleep is the adaptation phase, and this is what sort of turns people off the most. And like I know a lot of like RuneScape players in the past, according to Jebram, have attempted polyphasic sleep in like hopes of like getting better better gains, more gains in a week, and like no life harder, I guess. And usually like the first few attempts that people try at polyphasic sleep are usually failures, and people usually fail and just kind of dismiss polyphasic sleep entirely and say like, oh, it doesn't work, it's a sham, it's all bullshit, these people are just delusional and think that they're able to stay awake for 2 hours a day and like function. And people don't realize how hard adaptation really is, and how disciplined you have to be to pull off schedules like Uberman. I haven't even like attempted to pull that off yet. That's like really crazy, and I wasn't able to pull off Everyman. So I'm not that good at polyphasic sleep and adapting, but I have adapted to a little more basic schedules, I guess, like intermediate ones, I guess. And I'm happy with where I'm at. I'm not going to try and force myself to adapt to like a 2-hour a day sleep schedule just because it's going to be better for my RuneScape gains. I know I'm probably gonna struggle with that, especially with all my real life responsibilities as it is. It'd be like way too stressful. But yeah, a lot of people will basically attempt these like crazy schedules and then never attempt polyphasic sleep again because they failed and think that polyphasic sleep just doesn't work. The reality is that you have to stick to the schedule for like, it's usually like at least a week, depending on how difficult the schedule is. Like schedules like Uberman usually take around 3 weeks to over even a month or plus to really fully adapt to, and that's a lot of sleep deprivation, especially for a schedule like that on 2 hours of sleep a night. For me, my sleep deprivation has never really been that intense. I know adapting to my dual course schedule only took me like just under a week to do so, and I was pretty like on point with my times, I guess, and it helped me adapt really quickly. But there's a lot of like techniques that you should use to help you adapt, and like not every schedule is gonna work for everybody else. It's like a polyphasic sleep is not really like a one size fits all sort of thing. You kind of have to personalize your schedules, and that sort of involves a bit of trial and error, but also involves you kind of knowing what works best for you, like what worked best for you when you were monophasic. What times did you prefer going to bed? Like for me, I personally can't sleep at 9 o'clock in the evenings. It just doesn't work. It takes me forever to fall asleep, and it always did when I was monophasic. So I try not to give myself a core sleep too early in the evening, because it's gonna be harder for me to adapt, because I'm basically adapting to two things at once. One being the schedule itself, and two being like sleeping at a certain time that's very like unusual for me. So I think that if you wanted to adapt to a schedule, there are a lot of things you can do. This one being like making things like as easy as you can for yourself. So going to bed at times that you feel really comfortable with, that aren't like going to make the schedule impossible. Like it's not going to be a good idea to just take your first sleep at 3 o'clock, for example, in the morning, because you're not going to get much deep sleep, and that's essential to having healthy sleep. You need that bit of deep sleep, otherwise your schedule is probably not going to work and be sustainable. And other things like you can use for adaptation are simple things that people have used for like records when they're sleep deprived, just to keep them awake. Like for me, I watch a lot of films, because that keeps me very stimulated, and keeps me from being tired. Also, TeamSpeak helps with that too. Trying to avoid fatigue as much as you can while being sleep deprived is like one of the most key things you can do to help you adapt to a schedule over time. And usually after about a week of doing a schedule, at least an intense one, it's going to just start getting better and better over time, to the point where it becomes normal, because you're going to go through intense sleep deprivation in the short term. But if you keep at it and you keep sticking your times and you don't sleep more than you're supposed to, it'll eventually just keep getting better and better. But it does take patience, and sometimes you'll even fail, and you have to pick yourself back up and try again. And I wouldn't try again if you do fail a schedule. I wouldn't try again right afterwards. I'd give yourself like a break of at least like a week or two to kind of regain your bearings and regain your sleep that you lost, and then to go back hard at it again once you feel like doing so. It's very important when you're adapting to a schedule, especially polyphasic, that you don't mess up your times and you don't oversleep. If you're supposed to sleep 90 minutes at a certain time, don't sleep for more than 90 minutes, because the more you sleep, the harder you're basically teaching your brain that like sleeping more to make up for sleep deprivation is a good thing. And that's exactly what you don't want it to do, because you want it to eventually get used to a certain schedule. You want it to get so tired that it's going to force itself to get sleep at certain times, which is the goal of polyphasic sleep, essentially. So yeah, there's a lot of key things, and there's a lot of things you might learn along the way with adaptation, like alarm setting techniques. Usually if you're like the kind of person that will just have their alarm beside you, like when you're laying in bed or something like that, that's a pretty dangerous thing. At least for me it was, because if I have that alarm right next to me and I turn it off while I'm still laying down, I'm still laying down, which is like going to lead me to keep laying down and then eventually fall asleep. So what I do is what I first did was I would place my alarm on like a dresser or something like that, where I have to like get myself out of bed to walk over to the alarm and turn it off, which kind of like put me on my feet already. So like going back to sleep was a little bit harder than just if I was laying down already when I turned off the alarm. And I have started to do some crazier things. I don't really do it anymore because I'm adapted to my sleep schedule, and it's a little bit of a waste of time. But sort of like training yourself to do a certain like activity when you wake up it makes it easier to wake up and keep doing that, and then by the time you finish that activity, you're like a little more awake because you're a little less drowsy. Because usually when you just wake up, you're pretty tired, and it takes a while to kind of adjust to being awake. And I've done things like place my alarm on top of my refrigerator where I can't reach it just by standing up, so I have to like use a chair to get up on top of it. But then I place all the chairs inside a different room, so that when I wake up I have to go to that room and grab a chair, and then go up to my fridge, place the chair beside the fridge, and then stand up on top of the fridge, and then stretch my arm over and then grab it. It's pretty hard work for when you're tired, so it kind of wakes you up pretty quickly. At least it did for me. And that's something I guess I used to sort of like just like keep it consistent, as consistent as it can be. Because the easier it is for me to wake up, the easier it is for me to like not go back to bed, I guess. And once I'm like awake, it's pretty easy to stay awake. That's like the hard part, I guess, for me is getting out of bed. But some people do find going to bed hard, in which case I think like a pre-sleep routine is pretty essential for people like that, where you could do something like sit quietly in your room for like 15 minutes or more, to like lower your brainwave frequency, because that's basically your brainwave frequency controls your consciousness, and the lower it is, the more likely you are to just fall asleep. And it kind of goes down very slowly once you're laying in bed and trying to sleep, I guess. So yeah, like if you are like having trouble like going to bed and falling asleep quickly, yeah, do some like try to relax beforehand, because it helps a lot and speeds up the process. And it makes your sort of sleep times a little more accurate too, because if you're trying to sleep exactly 90 minutes and you set your alarm for 90 minutes, you want to fall asleep as quickly as you can, so you don't like sleep for only 70 minutes and then have to wake up afterwards, and you would have basically skipped out on your REM phase, which is pretty detrimental, since it's a pretty important phase of sleep, and it's the very end of your sleep. So yeah, that's pretty much about adaptation. Really, like, I have another point, but it's basically just to say, you know, if you really want to master polyphasic sleep, not that I haven't really mastered it yet, but I have mastered this schedule, I guess, that I'm on. I'm not good enough to do Uberman yet, but if you want to eventually get to that point, it kind of takes a little bit of perseverance. You kind of have to learn to accept failure sometimes, because if you don't accept failure and think that polyphasic sleep just doesn't work and it's useless and it's like bullshit, you're not going to succeed. And if you try to get past that and have an open mind about it, and try to learn from your mistakes and prevent them in the future with like oversleeps and stuff, you'll make it farther with polyphasic sleep, and you'll be able to use it to your advantage a lot more. Because I know there's a lot of like players who are able to do it. I think there's a lot of people that could actually pull off polyphasic sleep schedules, but just don't have the patience to fail enough times to get used to it, to learn from their mistakes and like do it properly, I guess. I know there's people out there that could do it, they just don't have the desire to do it, or they don't have like a schedule to do so. Because if you have a pretty tough schedule, like a tight schedule, like let's say you go to school, you go to work, you have meetings like sporadically, or like let's say your work schedule is not even it's not like consistent, that makes pretty much almost all polyphasic sleep schedules impossible to do. Because essentially, if you want to do something like dual core, everyman, or Uberman, you need to be able to nap at the same time every single day. And it's very important that it's every single day, because if it's not every single day, you just won't be able to adapt. That's like the biggest con about polyphasic sleep. It takes a lot of discipline, and it takes a lot of repetition, and it does take a pretty convenient schedule as well, because most people, I guess, probably can't nap at their lunch break, which is unfortunate, and it means that they can't really do polyphasic sleep to its fullest potential. I'm pretty sure anyone could do like segmented sleep. given that you don't really like, given that you don't work until like 2 a.m. in the morning and then have to wake up at like 7 or something like that. Otherwise it wouldn't work. But most people have a decent amount of block of time at night where they would have the time to do it. And I guess like another thing I forgot to mention as well, especially with segmented sleep, people might try to like wake up for 1 hour and then go to bed like an hour later. That's actually useless because you're basically your brain basically treats that as like an as like an interrupted monophasic sleep, which means that you had that 1 hour gap, which didn't really like was like a let's say you slept for a total of 6.5 hours. You would have gotten 6.5 hours out of a 7.5 of monophasic sleep, if that makes sense. Like that total time frame was like 7.5 hours if you slept for 6.5 and woke up an hour in between. You only got like the quality of like a 6.5 hour monophasic sleep versus a 7.5, which is like just worse, and it's a waste of time. So what you need to do is you have to have your sleep spaced at least 2 hours apart, because the ultradian rhythm is sort of split into two, where like you're tired after 4 hours, but you're like sort of like very minusculely tired after 2, and that 2 hours is sort of when your brain has like a cycle, is like resets its cycle, and that's like what initiates the possibility of like the polyphasic sleep in general. I don't really know too much of the science behind that ultradian rhythm itself. I just know that if you sleep, if you don't space your sleeps at least 2 hours apart, they're not really like useful. Like it's not going to help you. You need to space them at least like 2 hours apart, and like segmented sleep basically needs at least like a 9-hour block, I'd say. I guess probably an 8.5 hour block is like the minimum, like at night. If you have that much free time at night, including your sleep, then you could probably pull off any segmented sleep schedule. Yeah, so if there's like anything you want to learn more about polyphasic sleep that I haven't like covered, because I think I've covered pretty much most of the basics and some popular schedules and some ideals for adaptation and some methods you can use. You can visit websites like Polyphasic Society .com. I'm probably going to link these sites in the description, by the way. That has like a lot of the science on it, and has like every single schedule in its most basic form. And you can find like a little forums on there as well. That's not really used that much anymore, but it does have past information that can be useful. And it has like some cool little neat, like you don't really need to know, but like it's like sort of cool things to read up on, like about polyphasic sleep, like lucid dreaming, how it sort of increases the likelihood that you do lucid dream. I haven't actually lucid dreamed in my life once, because I don't remember ever having one. Oh, except for when I was a little kid, actually, but it wasn't from polyphasic sleep. Another thing you can do is you can go on the Polyphasic subreddit, and that's r/polyphasic, and it has a lot of very informative posts as well. Like I think the front pinned post has like very, very useful information about pretty much any sleep schedule you can possibly do, and ways to adapt as well. And it has obviously like anything you would expect on Reddit, just polyphasic like related posts where people help others. And I guess another sort of community-based source of information is the Discord. There's the Polyphasic Sleep Discord, which I will link in the description as well, and that has a lot of very useful information as well, and it has people that are on there that are very active, and if you have any questions about polyphasic sleep, you'll get an answer pretty quickly. And you can also like view other people's schedules as well, because there's like there's a thing beside their name that shows what kind of schedule they're on, and you can like see exactly what their sleep times are, which can sort of inspire like a schedule that you might want to use. And the last, like, it's not really a source of information, but it's sort of like a helpful tool, is a nap chart. And you can use this nap chart to sort of like design a schedule and like see how it's actually going to work. You can put things like what times you spend like going to school, like what times of the day you go to school, you go to work, and like other like small things, etc. It's a very useful tool, and I recommend you use it before you design your own schedule, just to see like if it even looks practical to do. I think that's about it. I don't really have any much more to say. I guess I can say that I will be trying to attempt like a little more intense schedules in the future if if I'm able to balance school and work and being a parent at the same time, and without having too much stress. I might like bump it up a notch and like try out Everyman again. But I'm really happy where I'm at with the dual core schedule. It's working really well, and I can still get like a 70+ hour weeks if I kind of put in the effort, I guess. Even with all my real life responsibilities, which is something I guess I'm pretty proud of. But yeah, that's about it. Expect a video soon. I guess somewhat soon, whenever I feel like making it. It won't be too. I won't wait till like 150 mil fish to make this, by the way. But a progress video, and a pretty in-depth one where I not just talk about RuneScape, but also my real life progress as well. Expect that in the near future. I didn't want to make the both topics in one video because I feel like it would have been too long, and I think this one's already getting pretty long as it is. I can't see how long it is, but I imagine it's at least like 20 minutes or something like that. Yeah, that's all. Thank you for watching, and peace out.